We just finished up 6 weeks in the Philippines, and we've made a list of 33 things that we think you should know before you head there. Make sure you know what the requirements are before you get on a plane. We were able to get a 30-day visa on arrival as Canadians, but that wasn't going to be enough time for us because we had planned for 45 days. Once you've landed in the country and you've gotten stamped in, you can then fill out an online form and pay a fee for a visa waiver, and you can extend your stay by up to 29 days. You need to print off a copy of the waiver once you've gotten accepted, because once we got to the airport when leaving the country, the first thing customs noticed was that we had overstayed our visa based off the date stamped into our passports, and then we had to provide them with the paperwork to show them that we had extended it and paid for it. It's a good idea to exchange some money into Philippines pesos before you get to the country. Not all bank machines will take your card, and it can sometimes be a bit of trial and error before you can find a bank that works for you, and this will just help alleviate stress and keep you from getting into any sticky situations. We also found that when transferring money between accounts, there was a delay if it wasn't yet the same day back in Canada. With a 13-hour time difference, we had to make sure it was past midnight in Toronto. Otherwise, the transfer would sit in limbo until around 1 p.m. Philippines time. When you do take cash out of an ATM, there's often a 250 to 300 peso ATM fee, and that's just the one charged by the ATM. That doesn't count what your bank might charge you for the conversion, and a lot of the ATMs also have a limit on them between 10 and 20,000 pesos, which makes it kind of difficult when you're trying to take out as much money as possible so that you don't have to pay as many fees. We paid a lot in fees. Most smaller establishments like restaurants and convenience stores might prefer to take cash or might only take cash. The ones that do take card will likely be charging a fee of 3 to 5%. Drinking water is provided by many hostels and hotels and is filtered and safe to drink. You don't want to drink out of the taps, and you should even be using bottled or filtered water for brushing your teeth. Restaurants also provide service water to the table free of charge. If you need to get laundry done, there's tons of places that will do it for you. You just drop off your clothing and typically can pick it up within 24 hours, and it averaged about 40 pesos per kilo. When it comes to the weather, we found that weather apps and networks were pretty off base when it came to determining how much rain we might be getting. The entire 10 days we were in Mobile, it was supposed to be pouring rain all day, every day, and we really only got a few showers, and they were mostly at night, with just blue skies and sun for a lot of the time. So don't let it discourage you if it looks like really poor weather. I think for the most part with the Philippines, it's kind of just a mixed bag. You're going to get some showers, you're going to get some sun, and you really kind of just don't know, so just be prepared for anything. And speaking of the sun, it is so crucial to have sunscreen and preferably some UPF clothing because the sun is so incredibly strong. We saw so many people with just red and blistered skin from just way too much sun exposure. We both got burned on an island hopping tour. Even though we were reapplying SPF 50 sunscreen constantly, we still got so burnt. So it really does help if you can have a UPF shirt, pants, hat, all of the things. Another important thing to note about sunscreen and really any kind of body care products like lotions and body wash is that a lot of the items in the Philippines have whitening in them, so like a bleach. We found it a bit difficult to find sunscreen when we ran out that didn't have whitening in it, so make sure you're bringing lots with you, and if you start running low, that's a good time to start looking for it. Don't wait until you're completely out because it can sometimes be tricky to find. In addition to sunscreen, it is also good to bring some insect repellent. I found especially in places like Mobile, I was just constantly covered in bites. Even though we did have it, I just kept not putting it on. So I definitely recommend that. And I also did have a bit of a sandfly incident. I believe that's what they were. And my whole legs were just absolutely covered in bites. It was awful. So yeah, especially if you're going to be on the beach during sunrise or sunset, those are typically the times that things like sandflies and mosquitoes really come out. So you're going to want to either cover up or wear some insect repellent. If you take any medications, make sure you bring enough for the entirety of your trip. We found that pharmacies have typical things like Advil, Tylenol, but when I ran out of things like lactase pills and glucose tablets, we were pretty out of luck. And speaking of being out of luck, if you're someone who uses tampons, make sure you bring a lot with you because it was really, really hard to find them. I think I was able to find some in one little store in Quran, and they were so expensive and being sold individually that I only ended up buying a couple. And I was only able to find a full box of them for sale at a reasonable price once we got to Manila, which was at the very end of our trip. It's a good idea to visit a travel clinic before you leave, basically to make sure you're up to date on any important vaccines and to get some information about what else you can do to keep yourself safe while you're abroad. For example, one thing we decided to do was the oral Dukoral vaccine, which basically protects you against some diseases from food and water. Always have a roll of toilet paper on you, just in case. Animal welfare can be a harsh reality to deal with. There are quite a few stray dogs and cats running around, and some of them aren't in the best shape, and it can be kind of hard to see. When it comes to swimming with whale sharks, I'm not going to get overly preachy here, but I'll just say don't do it. Research it, understand it, and make that decision for yourself, obviously, but my strong recommendation is to avoid it. A final note on animals, the roosters are absolutely insane. They're so loud, and they don't just crow in the morning, it is constant. So make sure you have some earplugs on you, and you'll also likely have some other visitors in your room like lizards and bugs. When it comes to booking ferries, you'll typically pay your ticket fee, but then you'll also pay a terminal fee and likely a baggage fee for your bags if they're larger than carry-on only. Even if you've purchased an e-ticket for a ferry, you still need to go to the check-in counter, as they'll give you an actual printed ticket in order to get onto the ferry. We've seen people get turned away in front of us who didn't go and check in first, so save yourself the time and aggravation. Ferries can also often be delayed due to bad weather. We had a rain delay for a few hours when we were taking a ferry from Bohol to Siquijor, and we had incredibly choppy seas on our ferry from El Nido to Coron, and they actually ended up canceling a lot of the ferries in the following days and a lot of the island hopping tours because the waves were just way too bad. A very common form of transportation that you'll likely be taking is either a trike or a tuk-tuk. Prices for these can be all over the place. There are occasionally set prices for certain rides, like from the Coron ferry terminal into town, which I believe was set at around 250 pesos. We found it really helpful to ask either the hostel or hotel staff how much a reasonable rate would be to get from point A to point B, and then we would use that as our guide. For example, there was a yoga studio that I went to a number of times while we were staying in Coron, and the first time I took a trike there, it was around 100 pesos, and then I asked the hotel staff when I got back, and they said 50 pesos would be more than enough. So then when I was bargaining for a ride in the future, I was able to be more insistent on 50 pesos and not feel like I was being unreasonable, while also making sure that I was paying a fair price. For the most part, you certainly can bargain, and don't be afraid to walk away if the price is just too high for you. When you arrive at a bus station or a ferry terminal after your trip, there's always tons of people there trying to sell you a private car or van transfer, and if that's something that you're interested in, go for it. If you're looking for a more budget option, just walk right on past them, leave the terminal or the station, get out to the street, and there's always either tuk-tuks or trikes there, and you can bargain for a more cost-effective way to get where you're going. Things will also cost more when you're arriving and going into town than when you're leaving. Download the Grab app before you leave your home country. It needs to be set up with your phone number, which you likely won't be using once you arrive in the Philippines. It's great for use in larger cities. It's exactly like Uber and can be used for food delivery or for rides. What we loved about it is that it took away the need to bargain for a ride or to make sure a taxi was running a meter. You just knew what the cost was going to be upfront. Renting a scooter on any of the islands is typically a more efficient way to get around, and it ranged between 250 and 350 pesos per bike per day, and that rate can change depending on where you are and how long you're renting the bike for. If you've never ridden a bike before and you're looking to learn, I don't recommend trying to do it in Mobile. The roads were pretty brutal. Bohol and Panglao could be a good place to learn, as was Siquijor. Siquijor has basically just got one main road that goes around the whole island, and the roads were in pretty good condition. El Nido and Sibaltan also weren't terrible, but Coron was a little bit more iffy, and with how close things are in Coron, you could probably get away with just using trikes and tuk-tuks. If you plan on taking flights within the Philippines to get from island to island, it would be really great if you traveled carry-on only, because you get charged quite a bit extra for check bags. While we were there was a bit of an active volcano situation on the island of Negros that ended up canceling one of our flights, and then we had to rebook it on a different route that resulted in us getting in really late to Puerto Princesa, and we weren't able to do the underground river. So just know that that's a bit of a possibility, and we had also had some ash warnings as well, but we never really experienced any of it. Some towns have additional environmental fees when you're entering the town. For Coron, it was 200 pesos per person. It would be ideal to bring your own mask and snorkel, but you can typically rent these at most beaches and major attractions, but it does add up over time. While you're at it, bring a dry bag, or you can also purchase one once you arrive in country. Water shoes or sturdy sandals for island hopping or canyoneering are also good to have. If you're looking to get PADI certified, we found that the prices in Mobile were some of the cheapest around the country. The two main companies for purchasing SIM cards are Global and Smart. However, we found when looking at the coverage maps and the areas that we were going to go to that an eSIM made the most sense for us. We chose the Saily eSIM because you can activate it before you arrive in the country, and then it's supposed to turn on by itself once you land. Plus, you can keep track of all your data usage in the app and easily re-up it. It's a good idea to download WhatsApp because you can use data for it instead of an actual phone plan, and most hotels and excursions will use this to communicate with you. And we found it the easiest for keeping in touch with friends and family back home. We were pretty surprised by how bad the Wi-Fi could be in some of the places that we were staying, staying, like the whole town, not just our hotel. Though occasionally we would find a cafe with a half decent connection in order to get some work done. But this is another reason why you would maybe want to get a data plan. Download offline maps and do it right now, because I always forget, and it is so helpful for when you don't have a good internet connection. And that's our list of things that we think you should know before heading to the Philippines. If we missed something, let us know in the comments below, or feel free to ask a question if there was something we didn't mention that you're wondering about. As always, thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.